Hey everybody, it's Jeremy from Follow Me Leadership. Hope all is well. Today I want to talk a little bit about the failures in the system that I experienced when I was being bullied as a little kid, because I think they're still pretty relevant today. Some things have probably gotten a little better, but I think some things have gotten worse. I think ultimately, I think a lot of it is we're all in denial of the problem that's going on with bullying and kids in our schools today. Um, but as as you read in my book that's coming out this Thanksgiving time frame, uh, Stand Up, Fight Back. The One of the first failures of the system, or the people that should be looking out for the little kids that are going to school and being picked on, was the bus driver. Most of my bullying occurred on the school bus going to and from school. Eventually, it did spill out into other locations at school and some places out in the public, but it predominantly happened on the school bus. So this woman who was our driver, she was witnessing it every single day, and I know she was aware of it because I sat usually in like the third row, maybe the second or third row from the front. So it wasn't like I was all the way in the back and she had no idea what was going on. Um, the other thing is that I know that when things would get loud, or if it got to the point where she felt she was annoyed, that's when she would chime in and yell at everyone to sit down or knock it off, and whatever. Um, but so one of the things with my elementary school, when we would get to school in the mornings, all of the buses would let everybody out at once. So depending on how long your bus ride was or how close proximity you were to school, sometimes you got there early and you might wait 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you were slower to getting to school, you might only wait a couple of minutes. But it was like right at a certain time, whatever our start time was in the morning, let's just say it's, I don't know, 7:45. That's when the buses would open up and let everybody out. So there were days we sat there for 10, 15 minutes and, the bus would be off, so she's just sitting there. I don't even know what she was doing, maybe reading a magazine or whatever. This was in the days before smartphones, so it wasn't like she was cruising her social media. But as kids were tormenting me and picking on me, I was sitting within 6, 7 feet from her. So she knew that this was going on. I'm sure she heard every word that was said. I know that there were times when I felt I was at my breaking point, that at the lowest of lows, I would kind of look up at the her rear view mirror inside the bus and make eye contact with her. So I know she saw the things that were going on. She saw me getting hit. She saw me getting slapped around and picked on, and my ears flicked, and people poking me or taking my lunchbox and hitting me with it. Um, I don't, and I'm not really sure what was going through her mind, because it's hard for me to understand why this woman allowed this to go on for so long. If I saw a small child being picked on like that, I don't care if I knew, if I had the responsibility or whatever. I mean, I would jump through fire to go over and put a stop to it. Um, she literally sat, 6, 7 feet away and saw it happen almost every single day, sometimes twice a day, morning and then afternoon. Um, and then there were, some later times, I know, when some of the bullying and the physical abuse got at its worst, and I'd be crying, just covered in snot and tears, and just my face all red, and I just looked absolutely terrible. When she'd pull up to my driveway to let me off the bus, I know there was one time she said to me, if you'd stop crying, and maybe that won't give them a reason to pick on you. Or another time, if she, one time she told me, she said, if you tell me that they're bothering you, I'll tell them to stop. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. As a child, I'm like, you're sitting right there, lady. You're seeing all of this. Why are you letting it go on like this? Um, so yeah, it's amazing to me that the adults in charge, that do step in or not step in at times, what goes through their mindset. But I think that bus driver was definitely the first point of failure in the bullying. And I know today some things have changed a little bit, where bus drivers, I'm sure, have complained that, hey, I can't drive and manage the kids at the same time. I don't know. I've had some other bus drivers that seem to be able to handle both tasks at the same time. And but yeah, sometimes you'll see there's a school bus monitor that's riding. It's another adult riding with the bus, and they sit up front. I don't know if their role is to stop bullying if it happens, or what, but that should be a good thing. Hopefully their presence does put a stop to things happening on the bus, but it doesn't mean bullying goes away. It just happens in different areas. I think the other major point of failure in the system was my school principal. So several times, I know the first time after things really started to get physical with me, where I think I spent the last probably 5 to 6 minutes on the bus having two older, bigger kids just slap me in the head, slap me in the face, back and forth, flicking my ears, pushing me back and forth, hitting me with my own lunchbox, and then just verbally berating me for that entire ride. I was a mess. Actually, I think that was the first time I got off the bus and the bus driver had said something to me, like, if you stop crying, they won't, they'll get bored and move on. This was after months and months of this going on almost daily. But anyway, so I got off the bus and I don't think I even made it to the front door, and my mom came out, and she just saw the look of me, and she was in utter shock and just immediately started inquiring as to what was going on. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to go to my room and be left alone. But she persisted and she pushed, and finally I caved and just had a breakdown and told her everything that was going on. And she lost her mind. And of course, like all good moms, she called the school and demanded an audience with the principal. And I think that was on like a Friday or something, because like that next Monday she drove me to school, and we went in and we talked to the principal together. Or maybe I got to school and then she showed up later. Regardless, but we sat in the principal's office, and my mother told him everything that I had said to her. She described how I looked coming off that bus. And what was interesting is that he gave a lot of what I call lip service to my mom. A lot of, I would say, like the politicians, they give all these promises that, hey, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to, we're going to take care of this, and we're going to make this right. And don't you worry, we got this, And it seemed like at the end of that meeting, oh, great, all will be well and all will be taken care of. But, the worst thing about meeting with the principal was in his mind, I think he thought his word was the law, and that, he could talk tough and scare anyone into submission. But what he ended up doing was, the number of times that I got called into the office after getting, beaten up quite a bit, is he would call in the boys that were bullying me to join us in the office. And he would raise holy hell and just kind of slam his fist on the desk and, make a big scene. So I remember one of the first times I was brought into the office, and one of the things he would do is that after we would talk, he'd give me all his promises. He'd promise my mother everything, His way of dealing with it was to bring the bullies into the office as well. And he would actually have, and I remember it vividly, because the outer wall to his office to the main hallway was all glass. And so as I'm sitting there kind of all disheveled and half crying, here come the two boys that are bullying me walking right by, and we make eye contact, and I immediately know I'm dead. That's it. Even if he has me leave right now and then brings them in a separate door, there's no doubt, who told on them or whatever. Anyway, so he would bring them into the office, and he would slam his fist on the desk, and he'd talk tough, and it was all fire and brimstone, and he just go on and on about how this has to stop, and you boys better knock it off, and don't don't you touch this kid, and yet, you know. And of course, they'd be defensive. They would say that, no, we're all just hanging out, we're all friends, we're just fooling around. Um, I remember that we left his office. I leave, and then we get down. I start walking down the hallway, and like 30 seconds later, I hear somebody coughing behind me, and they're about 100 feet behind me. And basically, as they're walking down the hallway, they're looking at me saying, "You're dead. You know, you're gonna pay for this." And you know, after that first time, we were all called into the office. I think the next couple days, you know, were quiet. You know, there was nothing had went on, but it was basically the bullies were trying to feel out the system to see, like, all right, let's wait till this blows over a little bit, and then eventually, within, you know, less than a week, their bullying started up again. They started, and not just on me, but they would kind of spread it around and pick on everybody equally, and eventually, as they realized, I guess nobody's coming for us, so then they started increasing the pressure, and then eventually all their focus was on me again. Um, and the worst thing that the principal did was, and I'll never forget, that day after we were in the office, he he stands outside the bus, as you know, we're all getting out of school at the end of the day. He's standing outside my bus, and as I walk by, he gives me a smile and puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "Don't worry, son, this will never happen again," and as if to like reassure me of something. And all I'm thinking is, get away from the bus. You're drawing attention, you know, to me. And so I get on the bus. The bus driver says, "You have to sit up front." And I'm like, "Why?" And she said, "Because I said so. You need to sit in the front seat today." I'm like, "Great." And the worst thing about the front seat of your school bus is, you know, as the stairs coming up from the door, you're right there. Everybody coming on sees you sitting in the front seat. And so as I get on, and you know, some other kids pile on, and you know, eventually like somebody came on and said, "Why is the principal here?" And they're like, "We don't know, but you know, Jeremy has to sit up front today." And so eventually everybody gets on the bus. Even the two bullies, as they get on, they kind of give me the look as they walk by. And then once it seemed like everybody was on the bus, the principal comes on, stands there, and talks to everybody for a minute about how we're going to treat everybody with respect, and there will be no bullying on this bus, there will be no picking on any kids, and that no one is to hurt me. He pointed at me. And I sunk to my lowest of lows. I just thought, number one, I'm embarrassed. I feel terrible. I'm already feel terrible about myself. And this guy basically just, you know, put the scarlet letter on me. And I was just like, what are you doing to me? And when he actually announced that no one was to touch me, I just was like, are you kidding me? And now I just feel like a big loser. And he got off the bus, kind of smiled at me as he walked by, and I think he kind of felt like, I just saved the day here. I did such a good thing. I'm sure he felt awesome about his job and probably wrote it in his little journal of being principal, and, you know, hey, on such and such date, I, you know, made the world a better place. But yeah, that gave me probably a good 3-4 days of, you know, no bullying or whatever. But eventually, as the bullies felt comfortable to get out of their seats and start kind of making their rounds, eventually they found me again, and it was very tame at first. But after a couple days of some moderate, you know, picking or teasing on me, then they started to increase their pressure, because it was clear to them, I guess nobody's coming. Nobody's going to yell at us, so we're good to go. So yeah, the principal, I think, was a major failure in the system, because I had been into his office several times, you know, including, I think, the last incident of bullying I experienced, which was about 2.5 years after it started. I was in 6th grade at that point, and it gotten to the point where I was done. I had nowhere lower to go, and I finally snapped, and I started screaming obscenities at the boys, because they had picked me up and dragged me to the back of the bus and wanted me to fight them. And I just started screaming. I wasn't hitting anybody, but I just screamed every swear word I could think of, imaginable. Anything that I had heard, even if it was a made-up word that I could add into a swear word. I was throwing it out there, and that's when the bus driver had come up behind me and just grabbed me and the other two boys and drug us all into the principal's office. And he again screamed holy hell and banged his fist on the desk. And these boys were being defensive, saying that I started it, that I'm always yelling at them. And what was interesting was that was a moment where the principal, knowing the history of what I'd gone through and how many times I'd been in his office, all of a sudden now he changes his tone where he's looking at me saying, listen, you've had a rough go at it, but you better watch yourself. This doesn't give you the excuse to act out. And I'm like, great. So now we're going to believe the bullies that are picking on me, that it's somehow my fault. So another kind of breakdown in the system or failures of the system were the couple of teachers that had witnessed some things that I was experiencing. I guess maybe they didn't see the actual bullying take place or the physical abuse take place, but they saw the aftermath of it. There was one teacher in particular, after the bullies found me in the bathroom and kind of slapped me around, punched me in the stomach, and after they left, I was laying on the floor kind of just crying and in pain. I could barely breathe, and teacher came in and kind of looked at me. I was like, what's going on? What are you doing? And I couldn't really talk because he punched me in the stomach. And this guy basically took it as I was fooling around and yelled at me to get up and get back to class and said, I'm going to have to write you up for, ducking out of class or something. He figured I was, blowing off class and just hanging out in the bathroom. Then there was the other time where these guys found me on the playground, and the one chased me around and eventually tackled me and then jumped on top of me and just kept slapping me over and over, spit on my face, and just gave me a couple Charlie horses and threatening me. And I laid there crying. They had actually taken my shoes off and just, threw one halfway across the playground, and then the other one they brought inside and, tossed down the hallway of the school. And the teacher who was there monitoring, recess, was sitting maybe 500 feet away on her chair, just kind of reading her book or whatever. They, I guess, technically had to have an adult outside, and that was pretty much the limit of her concern and care. And she just sat there and eventually yelled at me to get up and quit fooling around and get back into school. And eventually I got up and kind of brushed off the grass and everything off me and made my way in with no shoes on, my face all red and from crying. And she looked at me and was like, what are you doing? Quit fooling around and get into class. I was just like, are you kidding me, lady? Like, do you see me? I mean, call me crazy, but if I'm an adult and a teacher at a school, an elementary school, and I walk into the bathroom and find a student laying on the ground crying, and not really responding to my questions, I don't think my first instinct is to write them up for blowing off class. Or if I find a kid or see a kid laying in the fetal position on the playground with no shoes on, and eventually they come walking back in and they're crying and snot coming out of their nose and everything, I don't think my first instinct would be to yell at them to quit fooling around and get back into class. I mean, there were two people that at least saw right away that had no other connection to me and the bullying issues. I mean, I would think that would shock you as an adult. I certainly would. I mean, God, if I'm in a mall somewhere and I see a small child crying and it doesn't look like their parent is right there, yeah, I'm going to go over to that child and ask them if they're okay and say something. And it amazed me that here were two moments where somebody could have stepped in and maybe done something, and instead I was annoying to them. I was wasting their time. I don't know, just very bizarre. And then there was another incident where, so because I was being found in the bathroom every now and then by the bullies, I had this huge fear of being in there because the teachers had their own separate bathrooms, so there was really pretty much zero adult supervision in our bathrooms at school. And, once in a while they would come in and just yell at everybody to get moving back to class. But for the most part, they were never around. And so it scared me to death to be in the bathrooms alone because I figured that's where they're going to find me. And I was afraid, honestly, that they were going to kill me. I mean, that's the level of fear they were putting in me. So I found that I could actually, the janitor's closet was usually unlocked, and I found that I could go there and unlock the janitor's closet and, urinate into the mop sink. And one time he caught me. I happened to be in there using the mop sink, and he opened the door and basically just lost his mind that, how dare I disrespect him and the closet and the school and whatnot. And he's grabbed me by the shirt collar and dragged me down to the principal's office. At no time did he even ask, like, why I was doing it, or if he did, it was more of a rhetorical, but he just berated me the whole time. And, I'm being drugged back down to the principal's office. And even then, principal and I chatted, and he wanted to know why I was peeing in the janitor's closet. And I told him because I was afraid to go into the bathroom, that I would get beaten up in there. And I mean, this guy basically just told me I needed to stop it and knock it off, and that, if something's happened to me, I should come find him. Well, I'm sorry, if I'm getting beaten on in the bathroom, I can't really ask them to stop for a minute so I could go down to the principal's office to tell on them. Yeah, it's just one thing after another, constant failures in the system that occurred. And again, by all people who were probably good at their jobs, but failed me. So bullying's been around forever. It's something that I don't want to say it's part of human nature, but it just, as humans, we try to exert dominance over others. And I think when bullying occurs, it's occurring because it's somebody who's suffering from something internally themselves, and the only thing they can do to try to make themselves feel better is to try to exert some sort of dominance over someone else. But it's interesting. I look at when I was a kid, being bullied. I think the level of bullying is much more rampant now. It's much more involved. It's very technical. I mean, the advent of social media has made it much easier to do. And we'll get into cyberbullying on another podcast. But it's interesting to me that I think the efforts we go to today to try to curtail bullying, it's actually, it's not doing anything, and I think in some cases it makes it worse. There's things like, the schools are having kids sign like a pledge to not bully others. They'll have a big poster out that'll say, "End bullying, let's not bully other kids," whatever, and they want everyone to sign it, which, first off, kids don't see this as anything meaningful or binding. It's not like they view that their signature is some sort of legal binding thing that they're going to now have to adhere to. A lot of schools are having kids watch like anti-bullying videos, and these are terrible. I've seen a couple of them. There's some of the worst cinematic made or filmmaking that I've ever seen. Very just cheesy. They're talking down to these kids. It's like a bunch of adults trying to think they know what is cool and what's not cool. They're awful, and the kids know they're stupid. And I know when my kids would come home from school and I would ask them about the bullying video they had to watch, because we would get some sort of letter home saying that, hey, on Monday kids are going to watch this video, it's about bullying and yada yada. And I would ask them what they thought about it, and they always laugh and they say it was really stupid or boring. So clearly they're not getting these messages that that bullying is a real problem and that they need to do something about it. The awareness events that go on, I think are just, they're ridiculous. I think it makes the adults feel better that they're doing something. Apparently April is uh, bullying awareness month or something. It's stupid. All right, these having a saying that a month of the year is dedicated to, not bullying other kids. Who How does that fix anything? The walks that they have, like they'll have a walk to end. You have a walk for pretty much any sort of charitable cause or whatever. They'll walk to end hunger, or walk for this disease or that disease. And the walks to end bullying, I think, are just, they're laughable. Because obviously the kids and adults that are participating in these walks already are on the same page of, yeah, bullying is bad. So you're not really raising any awareness to them. You're not changing their hearts and minds. So I just don't understand the point of having it. But again, it's all of these things are done because it makes us as adults feel like, all right, we're addressing the problem, we're taking action, and we're going to make the world a better place. But kids see the fakeness of it. They see, the videos, they laugh at they'll have a guest speaker come in and, talk about bullying and how it's terrible and we just need to love and respect everybody. And, I think all of that it's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but that's not the answer. That's not anything that's going to stop bullying. And I think as adults, especially as parents and teachers and school administrators, we have to be honest about it and say, okay, this is a good program to kind of help the cause, but it is not a solution at all. I remember my kids when they were in grade school they had an assembly where they had some guy come in who was going to talk about not bullying others and respecting each other while he performed magic tricks. And I laugh at it because I asked them when I picked them up from school that day that what did they think about the magician guy, and they said, oh, he was really weird, he was stupid, and they're all making fun of them. And so clearly they're not getting the message about respecting others. But they just saw it as a total waste of time. So yeah, kids see through all this. They know all this stuff is a waste of time, or they view it as a waste of time. They don't see this as a solution because, they know bullying exists. They know it's bad. I don't think there's anybody out there that believes bullying is a good thing. Even for the kids that are bullying, I don't think they enjoy it necessarily, but we can get into this on another time, but I think it's more of a survival thing for them. But all these programs, so again, compare this to when I was in elementary school in the early 80s. There were no anti-bullying programs. There were no magicians that came in to talk to us about respecting each other. There was no videos we had to watch. There was none of that stuff. No pledges to sign. In fact, nobody talked about bullying at all. Yet today, bullying is so much more rampant. It's so much, you just see it and hear about it so much more, and maybe it's because we're raising awareness and now people are talking about it more. But what I like to look at is the fact that, the suicide rate amongst young teenagers that are being bullied is at an all-time high. When I was a little kid that age and I was being bullied, I never knew anybody that committed suicide or even heard of somebody as a child committing suicide, especially because they were being bullied. Never even heard of it. Who knows, maybe it did exist and just wasn't talked about, but that wasn't anything we know. Now, today, it happens all the time. Probably every week you hear about a suicide incident on the news somewhere, within your state. So I think we really need to start looking at these efforts and programs we're doing and realize they're not affecting change at all. They're not doing anything. And yes, I do think there are things we can do differently. It's never, first, we have to admit, it's never going to go away. Bullying will always be around. And I don't care how many programs you enact, how many pledges you make people sign, how many walks you make them go on. Bullying is never going to go away unless you confront it directly. And the first thing that needs to happen is we need to start instilling confidence in our kids and teach them to stand up for themselves. I think we promote victimhood amongst our children today because when they come to us and they're crying, they're disheveled, and they're because they're being picked on, we embrace them and we make everybody come together and say, let's all just be nice and let's all get along. What we should be doing is teaching that child, you know what, I feel terrible for what you're going through, but let's show you how to push back on this and how to stop this from happening. That is probably the only thing that will ever stop bullying, is to end victimhood. Stop teaching kids that, I just think back to when I was that age, and the principal telling me, hey, if they're picking on you, just come find me and I'll take care of it. Well, I found you several times. My mom brought me in several times, and nothing stopped. It got worse and worse and worse. The bus driver telling me that if I didn't cry, they'll just get bored of me. No, they didn't get bored of me. They actually got more interested in me and pushed me harder to try to cry. So we need to stop, letting our kids be victims in all this. Teach them the self-esteem and self-confidence and to fight back. This isn't about fighting per se. It's not about, punching and kicking somebody or whatever. This is about teaching somebody to stand in the face of adversity and say, I'm not backing down. Even if they get pushed down and beaten up, that's fine. But as long as they stand against it, they will feel better about themselves. And I think the other thing I look at too is, when we look at the bullies out there that are going after all these kids, we need to stop trying to put them first. And I see this a lot now today that, when a bully is identified, we're keeping them within the system because it's like somehow that if they just stay in school and we push them along through their grades, that eventually they'll learn the error of their ways. Well, they're not. All right, they're actually getting worse, and they're tormenting all these other kids that are suffering. So, if you got to suspend somebody, you suspend them. You got to expel them, you expel them. Hold parents accountable for it. You got to do something, though. Watching the videos and the pledges and the walks is not working. And I think until we all come together and realize that, this bullying will never go away. And it's going to all start with parents. Parents should be demanding accountability on all this from their schools. And if you're a parent and it's not working, if the school is treating you how they treated my mom, well, then you need to pull your kid out of that school and go somewhere else. I'm sure it's inconvenient. I'm sure it'll cost you. But you know what? What's the difference in price here? We're talking about the cost of having to go to a different school. Maybe you have to drive them now. I don't know. Maybe it's a private school, at your local church or something. Whatever that is nothing compared to what your child is going to continue to go through in that school when the system continues to fail. Anyways, hope that helps. Hope I've shed some light on some things that you all find interesting. Please follow me on all my social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then you'll see all my podcasts. I'll load up the video on YouTube, as well as podcasts going to Anchor, which gets pushed out to just about every podcast venue that's out there. Definitely please follow me. If there's anything I can do to help you, or if you have questions, comments, whatever, please shoot me a DM or an email, and I'll see if I can get back to you in a quick, timely manner. And if you need me to come speak to anybody, at your school or your organization or whatever, I'd love to do that. Just let me know. All right. Take care, everybody.